Welcome back to the Green Yard. It is a absolutely beautiful end of January day here in Phoenix, Arizona. It feels a lot like spring. I'm definitely enjoying it. I know our tropical fruit trees are enjoying that warmer temperature as well. It's actually almost 80 here today with a low in the mid 50s, which is perfect for our tropical fruit trees. And we're over here, we're in our stone fruit orchard, this kind of mini stone fruit orchard that we have here on the side of the Green Yard. I've done a lot of videos over here in the past, especially last spring. I did some pruning videos on like our Granny Smith apple, our Pink Lady, as well as our Asian pear. Kind of doing a little bit of a repeat of that, but it's more in depth this time here in our mini stone fruit orchard. So this is going to be one of our longer videos. I would recommend that if you haven't done so already, you definitely skip ahead to the tree that you would like to see pruned, doing that winter pruning, because that is what we're doing here in our mini stone fruit orchard of the Green Yard, is we are doing that winter pruning. It's a little late. I should have done it back when we had that hard freeze about 3 weeks ago. I just didn't have the time to do it, so better late than never when it comes to pruning, doing that winter pruning on our stone fruit trees. Now our stone fruit trees are trees like our apples, our peaches, our pears, our plums, even those like pluots and some of those hybrid varieties as well. Those are going to be our stone fruit trees. So in the Green Yard itself, we have our Pink Lady apple tree, which is by far the biggest of our apple trees and probably one of the most mature trees that we have here in the entire Green Yard. Next to me here we have our Granny Smith apple tree. We've had a little bit of a rough relationship, this tree and I, and we'll see this spring if I actually get any flowers or fruit from it. It's been in the ground since the winter of 2020, so it's been in the ground for 3 years and it has yet to produce fruit. So a little disappointed with that, but we'll see what happens. Behind me here we have one of our more unique stone fruits. This is actually a yellow egg plum, and we're going to be doing kind of our first pruning video on our yellow egg plum today, so that'll be cool. We also have our dwarf bonanza peach tree, which is awesome. Put off about 40 to 50 peaches last year. I did a couple harvesting videos with our peaches as well as with our Pink Lady apple tree. Actually got about 150 apples off our Pink Lady apple tree last year, which is awesome. Just past our bonanza peach, we do have our Honeycrisp, dwarf Honeycrisp apple tree. It's growing pretty slowly. I know it needs a significant amount of chill hours, but I figure I'm trying to grow all these tropicals here. Only this time, instead of the cold being an issue, I actually need more cold for that Honeycrisp apple because I know they need a higher chill hour. And then last but not least, over there in the corner, we do have that Asian pear tree, which has been doing pretty well. It actually flowered last year, which was really exciting. So we'll see if we get any fruit this year, or at least get one step closer to getting that fruit off that Asian pear tree. So we're going to go tree by tree and just kind of go down the line and go through pruning, what to do with pruning, what I've done in the past with pruning, what I've found success with. I hadn't really, last winter was kind of the first winter that I went through and heavily pruned all of these trees, and I saw a significant advancement in their growth last year. They grew a lot, and then they also put off a lot more fruit. So there is definitely something to say about going in and winter pruning those stone fruit trees. It really does help them kind of set that fruit, as well as kind of get that oomph to grow more. So let's go tree by tree. This may be, since it is one of our longer videos, it may be a multi-video, meaning I may change throughout the video. So just be aware of that as you scroll through and look for the tree that you're looking for information about winter pruning, that I may change outfits during that time. But let's start over actually in the corner here with our Asian pear tree, and let's start pruning. Here we go. All right, so we're gonna start over here with our Asian pear tree. This is actually one of my favorite trees in our stone fruit orchard side of the green yard here, and it's been in the ground for quite some time. I actually took it out of the ground at our old house and brought it over into the green yard. So I did transplant it kind of in the middle of summer in June, and it did okay that first year, but it's just kind of taken off since then. It's actually about 9.5 feet tall right now. It really put on a whole bunch of new growth last fall. So we went from maybe about 5 feet tall to maybe 6 feet tall to about that 9 foot tall. So about 3 feet in fall of last year. And I saw that with a lot of our trees around the green yard. They really enjoyed last fall. I don't know if it was the temperature or humidity or who knows what, but most of our trees really liked last fall here in the green yard, fall of 2023. We're gonna winter prune this guy though. You can see on here, there's a variety of different branches kind of coming off. One of the main things that we're going to focus on with this tree is just kind of cutting it down. It's getting too tall already, so we're gonna trim it back a little bit here. Too tall for me. I mean, you could let it grow if you wanted to, but for me, I'm trying to keep it at a more manageable size. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to clean out the middle here. You can see there's some sticks crossing. This one actually has some damage on it right now. So we're gonna kind of trim out all of those branches in the middle, kind of clear things out. What we're looking for and what we do want to keep are these guys here. These are actually the flowers that will come out. Last year, like I said, we got about 2 or 3 flowers last year. I was really excited about it. Asian pears can do well here in Phoenix. They generally require an additional pollinator, meaning an extra tree, right? They're not always self-pollinating. This one apparently is a self-pollinating variety. I don't know the variety, but it can take some time for them to fruit here in Phoenix. So the fact that I got flowers already is a pretty good sign. Maybe we'll get some fruit this spring. I'm definitely hopeful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my my pruners first, and I'm going to go ahead and disinfect them. The reason you want to do this is in case you have any sort of diseases or anything on here from the last tree you trimmed. You want to go ahead and get all of that off. So I have a bottle of rubbing alcohol, and I have one of my cotton pads, and we're just going to kind of soak this cotton pad in the rubbing alcohol, and then we're going to go and we're just going to kind of clean off the blade as best we can over here on our pruning shears. So I do this between every single one of my trees that I trim. I didn't do it the first few years. Unfortunately, I didn't transfer any sort of disease or anything, but it's always better to err on the side of caution when it comes to that, because definitely don't want those disease fruit trees. So I'm going to start at the bottom because we have a lot of like low branches coming off. I'm going to trim most of those away. This one actually, part of the reason the Asian pear isn't bigger and more mature is when we first moved in, we actually were trimming our two giant mulberry trees, and a branch fell on top of our Asian pear and snapped off that main trunk. So even though this is growing above the graft, it was a smaller trunk that started out. So definitely made it a little bit longer time for it to get to this size. So let's go ahead. We're going to start pruning. I'm going to start with the bottom branches coming out. I really don't want those guys down there. I might keep 1 or 2. I definitely want to make sure that they're above the graft, because otherwise that rootstock's trying to take over. And then I'll start kind of trimming out and thinning out the middle part here. Here we go. All right, so went ahead and winter pruned our Asian pear tree. Definitely a lot shorter. Also a lot thinner in the middle. The biggest thing was we had all these suckers coming out of the base here. Definitely didn't want those guys, so I kept some of our lower branches, but I trimmed most of them away. One of the big things when you are trimming is that you want to cut just above where there's a leaf. I believe they're called nodes, leaf nodes. Okay, And you want to cut it a little bit more of an angle than this, just in case it does rain, that the rain kind of falls off. This one's actually kind of a poor cut. But these are the flowers that we're gonna have, those kind of like flower nodes, flower sprouts that are coming out of the tree. Really thinned it up here, trying to make it so that it's not quite so tall. I know it's gonna grow a lot this year, but definitely want to get some fruit hopefully this year off of this tree. As I got to the top, I did more of that angled prune that you want to see, and you'll notice it's just above that leaf node there, that leaf sprout. So what's going to happen is this is going to grow in the direction that that leaf sprout is going in, maybe even form a new branch, and that's what we want. So we want to make sure that any of those leaf sprouts, those leaf nodes, are pointing away from the middle of the tree and kind of going to the outside of the tree. All right, so I'm over here now with our Pink Lady apple tree, that Crips apple tree. This tree has just taken off, especially last fall, the end of the growing season last year. Really put on a lot of growth. It's really important that I actually trim this guy out now. I've waited a little bit too long for this guy. He is starting to bud out, so I definitely want to trim it quick to hopefully get it a little bit smaller before it starts budding out. Hopefully promote maybe a little bit of extra growth, extra size to those apples. This is actually the apple tree where I had our over 150 apples harvested from this tree last year. Really amazing tree and amazing producer. Definitely our biggest tree over here in our mini stone fruit orchard. Also probably the oldest. I got this guy as a 15-gallon tree back in 2019. Actually planted it at the old house, took it out of the old house and transplanted it here as a quite large, probably more like a 25-gallon tree. In late 2021 is when I transferred that over to this property here. So it's been in the ground here for over almost 3 years, which is great, and it's clearly done amazing. Get a lot of apples off of this tree. In fact, my oldest son, he loves these apples. He always asks middle of the year, hey, can I have some of those green apples, right? Because even though they are Pink Lady and they do ripen to red, usually I harvest them more as that green. You can definitely check out that harvesting video. I'll include it here as well, where we harvested all of those apples. So let's go ahead. Same principles really apply for pruning, winter pruning our Pink Lady apple tree. I want to focus on our leaf buds that that they're pointing in the direction where I want that branch to grow, right? That's one of the biggest things. That leaf bud is going to take that branch in that direction, so I definitely want to focus on that. I want to thin out the middle. I have a lot of crossing branches on this particular tree. I definitely want to make and minimize those crossing branches as much as I can, and then of course look for anything that's dead or damaged. I really don't want those damaged branches to continue growing. Now is a great time to kind of take those out, remove them, so we can get good branches in their place. So as always, I have my pruning shears here, I have my rubbing alcohol, and I have my cotton pad here. So I'm just going to pour some of this rubbing alcohol on my cotton pad and then clean off my pruning shears from my last tree. I don't want to spread any sort of disease or anything that maybe the previous tree had, or some of those branches, those dead branches might have had. So I'm definitely going to clean it off before I start trimming this tree. And then I'm just going to start kind of over on the side here. You'll see that our Pink Lady is kind of running into our Granny Smith apple tree over here. That's okay. That's kind of the design of this place. That's why I planted all the trees close together. I'm fine if they start running into each other a little bit and competing a little bit there, but not to the extent that they are right now. So I'm going to prune it back probably significantly on this side, and also on the side that's over by kind of this cement slab that will hopefully someday be more of like a basketball court or a future casita. We're going to trim it a little bit away from there as well. So I'm gonna start on this side and just start trimming around and kind of pruning this area. Here we go. Alright, so went ahead and trimmed this Pink Lady apple tree. Got a lot of trimming there. You can see it's significantly smaller than it was before. Definitely took it down in height. This one was already pushing 12 feet by late summer last year, so definitely wanted to take it down. I did cut off, some branches. I cut off some flowering branches. I really tried to thin it out. One of the things with our winter pruning is, don't be afraid to take something out, or don't be afraid to leave something if you're not sure. Like I left this guy on here, not sure if that was a smart idea or not. Hopefully it grows in that direction and ends up working out for me. One of the awesome things about nature and about growing your own food, and especially our stone fruit trees, is that they are fairly forgiving. So if I miss something this year, that's okay. I can always get it next year. Or if I trim off too much, I might just miss out on a little bit of fruit, but that's not okay. The trees themselves are very forgiving. They enjoy those heavy prunes. They enjoy being cut back, and ultimately you see better growth and even better fruit production too. So that's our Pink Lady apple tree prune there. Looking really good. I'm excited for this harvest season and this growing season as we continue into the spring. All right, so I have here next to me our Granny Smith apple tree. We're over here now kind of in the middle of this stone fruit orchard, this mini stone fruit orchard that we have against our wall here. This, by the way, this is the wall that's on the west side of our property. These trees do get full sun pretty much all year round. They sometimes get a little bit of shade after about 6 o'clock in the summer, 6:30. They'll get a little bit of shade from these giant palm trees that are here in our neighbor's yard as well, but they pretty much get full sun all day, and they love it too. Our Pink Lady apple tree is just off to the side. On the other side, we have that yellow egg plum as well. But here's our Granny Smith. So Granny Smith apple tree and I have had kind of a tumultuous relationship so far. I bought it. It wasn't the healthiest tree when I bought it. It was on sale tree and didn't look quite the best, but I still wanted to give it a shot. I do enjoy Granny Smith apples. Not my favorite, but I do enjoy them, and I've heard they grow very well here in the Phoenix area. This tree has been in the ground since, let's see, it was winter of 2021. No, I'm sorry. I did a planting video, so that would have been spring of 2021 is when it got put in the ground. So it's been in the ground for a long time. it just hasn't really produced anything. And so I don't know if there's some sort of if I'm not trimming it back enough, or there's something else that I'm doing wrong, or some sort of disease that it has. It grows a little funky sometimes here and there. So I don't know if that's some issue that it's having, but it hasn't produced yet. It's produced flowers, so it does flower. It flowers way late. Flowers like end of April, beginning of May, whereas our Pink Lady apple tree, which is our biggest producer, that one flowers here at the beginning of March. So there is a separation between when these two apple trees flower. So I'm not sure if that's why, if it needs that cross-pollinator or what's going on. I'm hoping we get some Granny Smith apples this year. I have had a few like really small ones that I just leave on the tree and the birds eat, but nothing substantial yet. So hopefully this year is the year for our Granny Smith apples. So gonna do something similar with our Granny Smith apple tree. This one has a lot of crossing branches here in the middle, so definitely gonna take some of these out. Lots of crossing, lots of little branches in the middle, and a few things pointing towards the ground. That's something that I haven't really mentioned, or I forgot to mention with our Pink Lady apple, is anything pointing towards the ground or down. Definitely want to trim those guys too. And I'm going to bring it a little bit away from the wall as well. It's kind of pushing into the wall right now, so I'm going to bring it a little bit away from the wall. Just like always, I'm going to take my rubbing alcohol on my cotton pad. This one still has the rubbing alcohol on it, so I'm just going to give it a nice kind of rinse here with that rubbing alcohol. Make sure I don't spread any sort of disease over to our Pink Lady apple tree. Like I said, I do really like this apple tree. It grows pretty well. It does get a little sunburnt though in the summer. So this one definitely gets burnt back in the summer, unlike our Pink Lady apple tree, which does not get burnt back at all in the summer. It handles our summers like a champ. Our Granny Smith does seem to take those summers a little bit harder than our Pink Lady. So something as well to keep in mind if you're planting that Granny Smith apple. Maybe look for something like a Pink Lady apple instead, because those do really, really well here. I don't have one, but I've also heard that Anna apples do pretty well here in the Phoenix area too. So those are some apple trees that those varieties do especially well here in the Phoenix area. So let's go ahead and we're just going to trim this guy. So went ahead and trimmed this guy. Like I was talking about before, it does have some parts that are a little bit like misshapen and stuff in here. Maybe some of you apple experts can tell me what's going on. Just growing a little bit different than our Pink Lady apple tree, right? And then I actually had this completely dead branch too. That must have died during the summer. I don't know. It was still fully attached. Completely dead branch that ended up getting trimmed as well. I left more of our top branches like this year on our Granny Smith, mainly because I just want to make sure that it it continues growing, and maybe we can get some of that fruit this year. That's really one of my goals, is to get some fruit from our Granny Smith apple tree this year. So I'm hoping that giving it a little bit of extra love and attention, a little bit of extra fish emulsion, and that agricultural salt will hopefully push it over the edge and let it fruit out and flower out and actually hold some apples this year. All right, we're over here now with our yellow egg plum. So yellow egg plums, a little bit more of an interesting kind of, I don't want to say exotic because it's not tropical, but it is a little bit exotic for the fruit. When I first got this tree, and I actually did a planting video of this yellow egg plum here in Phoenix, that was back a long time ago. Many years ago, I planted this tree as a bare root, small bare root tree. And when I did my research back then, our yellow egg plums are typically grown in like England, United Kingdom, that area, and they're used mostly in desserts. They create a medium-sized yellow plum that's a little bit on the sour side and used mostly for desserts. So I don't know if this is going to end up producing here in the Phoenix area. I don't know of anyone else growing a yellow egg plum here in the Phoenix area, but I do have a yellow egg plum. It's actually been growing very well. Structure is pretty good too. I did winter prune it last year as well. Has a few spots that need to just be taken out from some damaged branches, things like that. I'm going to trim it back, see if it flowers at all this year. So far, I haven't gotten any flowers off of our yellow egg plum. Just kind of been growing, so we'll see if this year is the year for us to get some of those flowers off of our yellow egg plum. But of course, to encourage those flowers and that growth, just like with our other stone fruit trees here, I do need to do that winter pruning. So I have my clippers once again and my cotton pad full of that rubbing alcohol to kind of sanitize it from the last tree so we don't spread any sort of diseases or anything from one tree to the other. So just going to set my cotton pad back on top of the rubbing alcohol bottle. And we're going to start pruning. Now, this actually has this branch here. This was our mystery grapevine from last year. I actually did a harvesting video on our mystery grapevine. Really delicious. Ended up being, I think, like the flame seedless grapes, or they're called something like that. I'm not sure the exact variety that it was, but it did great. It did amazing. It was growing really well. You can see it here against the wall as well. And then late October, all of a sudden it just started declining and died. So I don't know what happened to it. My goal for this space is to eventually grow a couple different varieties of grapevines and maybe even some thornless blackberries along this wall here. I think that would be really cool to have kind of this green wall as well here with those vines, particularly grape and blackberries. So that's a goal for the future, just not one that has been accomplished thus far. But let's go ahead, let's get into this yellow egg plum and definitely give it some pruning here. So let's do it. So our yellow egg plums over here, like I mentioned before, main focus, bringing it down to a more manageable level. And then of course, cutting out anything that's kind of crossing in the middle. I did a decent job with that. I actually left some of these guys here in the middle like this one, because there's a possibility that it could branch out kind of into this open space that's here. So I left a little bit of the crossing branches, probably a little bit more than I should have, but I figure I can always trim them again next year. There were a few branches that were kind of diseased a little bit and had kind of these open sores, so I did get rid of those. You know, that is part of why we do our winter pruning with our stone fruit trees, is really to start everything out on a fresh foot. You know, make sure that we get rid of anything that's diseased or dead or crossing or just overall doesn't look very right. I honestly don't know with our yellow egg plum what the flowers look like. I know with the apples and the other ones, it looks like we have some leaves already sprouting here, which is awesome. It's coming back already. So we'll see how it does this year. Here's this that grapevine that just kind of unfortunately didn't make it, and very sad and disappointing. The grapes were actually really delicious that we had last year, so very sad that that vine didn't make it. One of the big things with this yellow egg plum that I forgot to mention is that it has a very aggressive rootstock down here. You can actually see a branch that I have to cut off of the rootstock here still. I just need a bigger clippers, but yeah, the rootstock below the graft is very aggressive with this yellow egg plum. So I don't know if that's true of all plums or just this particular variety, but very, very aggressive rootstock. I've had to do multiple trimmings of decent sized shoots coming out of the rootstock, trying to take that energy away from our yellow egg plum that's above the graft here. If you guys have questions about the yellow egg plum, definitely comment below. It's kind of one of those more unique trees, and I'm hoping that I get fruit soon. I really don't know. I have no time frame. I don't know if it's ever going to fruit here in Phoenix, but kind of a unique and interesting tree to have. It does get a little bit more sunburn than our other trees. So if you are going to plant a yellow egg plum, I would recommend planting one with a little bit more shade than what this one gets here, which is pretty much full sun all day long in the summer. Okay, so by far my favorite of our stone fruit trees, other than our Pink Lady apple, where we've had those big harvests of over 150 apples, this tree is definitely the second favorite so far of our stone fruit trees, and this is my dwarf bonanza peach tree. This tree was planted as a small 3-gallon tree, and I actually once again put it in the ground at our old house. I had just planted it when we decided we were going to move to the green yard, and took it out of the ground, brought it over, planted it here in the mini stone fruit orchard of the green yard. It had a really hard time that first summer. It was just getting pounded and baked. And that summer of 2020, we had a really hot summer, and it was having a really hard time. Finally fruited last year. Last year we had just this abundance of bonanza peaches, and they were so sweet and so tasty, and man, my mouth is watering just thinking about them this year. I definitely want to add some other varieties of peaches to the green yard. It just hasn't happened so far. My biggest one that I want to put in is a Florida Prince peach, so hopefully going to add that either this year or next year. But this guy's gotten pretty big. Last year was a huge growth year for it. It went from, it probably put on about a foot and a half, almost 2 feet of growth, pretty much from right about here all the way to the top where it is now. So I definitely want to bring it down a little bit. I know it is a dwarf tree, so it's going to stay pretty small anyways. I'm not going to bring it down as much though as some of our other trees, like our Pink Lady apple tree, even our Granny Smith apple tree that kind of took off, or our Asian pear. I'm not going to bring it down quite the same, just because it is that dwarf tree anyways. Plus I'm seeing a lot of blossoms starting to come out on the tips here. It is now, I know we started the video at the end of January, it is the middle of February now, it's the 13th today, and so we are starting to get a little bit warmer. Definitely need to trim and get this done. We're still in the safe zone where we can trim and get things done, but definitely want to do it before it gets any warmer. I know forecast for the future, mid 70s for high and those 50s for that low. So it seems like we're starting to get into spring. I know we have at least 1 or 2 more cold fronts coming through, but let's go ahead, let's get this guy trimmed here. I'm going to focus more on the inside and getting rid of some of these internal branches that I know are going to cause some conflicts first, and then we'll go ahead and focus on maybe taking it down a little bit in height. Here we go. So I'm still looking for the same thing when I'm cutting this tree. Just like all of our other stone fruit trees, you can see the leaf bud, which is the small kind of indentation where we know the leaf is going to come out in the future. And so I can see that leaf bud, and I know that the branch is going to kind of follow wherever that leaf bud is going. So I kind of picking the direction of where that branch is going to go into the future, and so that's what I'm doing with those leaf buds, and that's why I'm so I'm looking so particularly about which direction I want the tree and the branch to end up going this following year. All right, so here's our dwarf bonanza peach tree after that prune. Definitely took a lot off the top here. You can see most of these cuts here off the top. I thinned out the middle, but I didn't do as much as I originally had planned. You can see there's still some branches in here in the middle that are potentially going to cross. I decided to leave a lot of them in the middle just to see what they do. I can always prune again next year, which is one of the great things about our stone fruit trees. At the end of the day, any mistakes you make this year, you can always recover from next year, either with new growth that comes out or by simply, pruning that bunch next year. You can see it's been a little bit since I actually filmed the pruning video. We do have some awesome flowers coming out. They're really, really beautiful, beautiful peach blossoms that are starting to come out on our dwarf bonanza peach tree. It's looking like it's going to be a very, very productive year this year, and I'm very grateful I got my pruning done when I did. Took it down about 8 inches or so from the top. Wanted to make sure that it stayed a little bit below the wall, because I know it's going to probably reach above the wall by the end of this growing season, the end of the year of 2024. So and try to reduce it a little bit on the sides as well. The bottom trunk had a few shoots coming off that I didn't like, so I did cut some shoots off the very bottom of the trunk, and made way for some of these branches that I really do like. This tree actually has one of the better structures that I've seen with our peach trees. Really good branching, in my opinion, coming off of that trunk. We have 3 main branches, and from there we have a few additional branches coming off as well. So looking forward to a really, really productive and amazing peach season. All right, so this here is our Honeycrisp apple tree. I know I got a lot of comments when I planted it. I actually did a planting video on this tree back when we put it in the ground in, I believe it was the spring of 2021. So it's been in the ground for 3 years, right? And it's been doing okay. I put on a lot of growth last year. It's kind of growing a little lopsided, but put on a lot of growth last year. One of the big things that I was not very careful with and that I kind of neglected is the rootstock coming out. So this branch is actually our rootstock, which is something that we're gonna obviously remove here in a few minutes when we go and do our winter pruning on this tree. I got a couple flowers last year, which was very exciting. The Honeycrisp apple tree is part of the reason that not a lot of people grow them here in the Phoenix area, is they do require a lower chill hour that we really can't get. But as I mentioned in my planting video, when I did the research on this tree before I put it in the ground, this is a dwarf variety. So it is a dwarf Honeycrisp apple tree. And from what I looked at, some of the more dwarf varieties have higher chill hours, meaning that they don't require as many chill hours. Sorry, this is a high chill hour. Whereas like our Pink Lady apple tree has a pretty low chill hour, which is why we're able to grow it here in the Phoenix area. And that chill hour is just basically how long it needs to be cold, right, or at freezing or below, in order for it to fruit. And realistically, even with our Pink Lady apple tree, we don't really meet that chill hour, and yet it still does great, and it still fruits and puts on a lot of fruit. So kind of pushing those boundaries, not only with our tropical fruit trees, but also with our stone fruit trees that require a little bit more cold than what we get here. With that being said, though, same thing with our Honeycrisp apple tree. I'm really focusing on clearing out some of the dead and damaged branches. I see a decent amount of damaged branches here. A couple of them are crossing. And then I definitely want to leave some of the flowers this year. So this branch in the back, I can actually see is mostly, it looks like it has some flower buds coming out. So I definitely want to leave that, see if I can maybe get a Honeycrisp apple this year, or at least have it flower out again to progress forward with that. So I'm going to take my cotton pad full of that rubbing alcohol and just clean my shears. Haven't cleaned them since the last tree we pruned. And then I'm going to jump in here. The first thing I'm going to start with is this rootstock in the bottom. So anything below the graft, and I'll show you up close what the graft looks like. Anything below that graft, if it is growing below the graft, it means that it's that rootstock that's coming back. And we don't want that, because we want our Honeycrisp apple tree. We don't want whatever the rootstock is, right? Usually it's an unfavorable variety that has maybe a little bit more tolerance for heat or for salt or whatever the case may be. So this guy's actually pretty far down here, way below the graft, actually coming out of where the roots are. So definitely going to take him out. Not sure what it is. And then we'll just kind of go through and trim the rest. Got some funky looking branches on here too, so definitely going to trim them off and just kind of go from there. A lot easier with our smaller trees to go through that pruning. This one only took me a few minutes to do. Once again with these guys, just like with our other trees, really focus on the direction that you want these leaf buds, these new branches to go in. Obviously you don't want any of them crossing each other or anything that might cause any sort of issues. Same with down facing. The biggest one that I saw with this tree is there's a lot of branches that were just facing and pointing towards the ground. I actually left one still because it kind of recovered. It's this guy right here. You can see it started out pointing towards the ground, but then it's kind of recovered and turned into a nice branch. So I'm going to wait and see how it does this next growing year, this growing season, see how it does, see if it does better, and continues that upward trajectory that it's on right now. So that's our Honeycrisp apple tree. It's a decent sized tree. I'm excited for the future. I think this year is going to be a really positive year for it, and it's going to see a lot of growth. Typically in that third, fourth year in the ground, I found that our apple trees kind of hit their stride and really start growing and even producing as well. So I'm hoping that that's what happens with our Honeycrisp apple tree too. It has been quite the journey to get to this point. I have finally trimmed and winter pruned, I should say, all of our stone fruit trees in our mini stone fruit orchard that we have along this west wall. Remember, this is a west wall, so it does get full sun all day long. We're actually in the morning right now. It's a weekend morning in the middle of February. Yes, it's taken almost 3 weeks to go through from when I started with our Asian pear tree and continued with all the rest of our stone fruit trees here. That's just how time works sometimes when you have kids and a family and a bunch of other responsibilities as well. So everything's looking great though. Actually, it's kind of cool because it's taken so long to put out this video and to kind of trim our last couple trees, some of our trees have started putting out flowers, especially our Pink Lady apple tree. Pink Lady apple tree is starting to leaf out as well as bud out. So it's looking really great. I'm excited for this year. I'm excited I got it trimmed before that happened. It was just starting to, like I mentioned in that section, just starting to leaf out when I went and pruned it, but now it's really kind of taken that prune and gone with it, and it looks really good. Same with our Bonanza peach. I see a lot of new flowers on here, a lot of buds coming out. So super excited for our Bonanza peach as well. Actually have a couple leaves coming out too. So everything's starting to wake up. We're supposed to be a lot warmer moving forward. You know, we kind of had the end of our cold front. Now we're kind of going into that warmer time. Usually we'll still have one more frost or one more week of frost here in the beginning of March. It's just kind of the way it works. That's what got me last year and took out a couple of our tropical trees, those frost sensitive trees. I took everything off around this time last year because it started being nice. It was above 50 degrees. Took all my frost fabric off, and then we got hit again with a hard frost. So it does happen. I'm leaving everything covered this year until the end of March, just for my own peace of mind, so that I know that everything's good to go with our tropical trees. With our stone fruit trees, I'm definitely going to keep doing some updates this year. I've kind of neglected giving you guys updates other than a few pruning videos last winter, but that's kind of it. So hopefully we get a couple growing videos this year talking about growing our Asian pear and our Bonanza peach, and hopefully some more harvest videos. I know last year I did a harvest video on our Bonanza peach. We got a bunch of peaches off there, really amazing, good, sweet peaches. And then of course with our Pink Lady apple tree as well, got over 150 apples harvested off our Pink Lady apple tree. So I did a video on that too. So I'm excited for this year. I'm excited for it to be spring, or almost spring here in Phoenix, right? I know it's not in other parts of the world, but in Phoenix it's getting to feel like spring. And I'm excited for these trees to grow now that they've been winter pruned. If you guys have any questions, comments, if you would like to see more of our trees or any of our other fruiting or flowering trees here in the green yard, please make sure you comment below. If you want me to go into more specifics about any one of our stone fruit trees here in this mini stone fruit orchard that we have, just let me know in the comments as well. I'd be happy to make an individual video about one of those trees. I'm super excited, and hopefully we get to put out some more great content this year. As always, live green, plant lots, and of course have fun. We'll see you next time.